So here in southern Pennsylvania, at this campus, there's a lot of people that work out. There's some water here for you. There's a lot of people that work out. Some ride bikes. Some do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I gotta throw that out there. Other people go to the gym, that kind of thing. But none of us have arms like that. And I wore long sleeves for a reason this morning, and a nice baggy shirt. So you're 53. Am I correct?
No, man, I'm 23.
When's your? If I could look like that when I'm 53, I'm doing something right.
Yeah, I was born in 1964.
When's your birthday?
February 11th.
February 11th.
I'm a lover.
All right. So how long exactly was your fighting career? Obviously, that was a long time. But
yeah, I think I started over in Japan in '89. Okay. I started over there and then put a few years in over there. And then, of course, the no holds barred UFC era came up. And then I started in '93 here in the States.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for those who maybe don't follow MMA or don't really know what MMA is, what would you say is the biggest difference between MMA and other competitive sports, whether it's football, wrestling, whatever the case may be?
Well, there's two eras. One, there's the mixed martial arts, which is different mixtures of styles put together. And then you've got the no holds barred, which is the beginning days of the UFC, which is no rules, no time limit. You know, you fight 4 times in one night. You know, anything goes. So it evolved into mixed martial arts, I believe, in '96, when they started bringing in some rules and regulating it. So there was 2 different type of styles then. But I would have to say, you know, if you're looking at other disciplines, even in boxing and football and any other sports that you see, karate, all of them, MMA is really what you would say a smorgasbord of disciplines. I mean, it's got football in it. You know, you get guys that just run and tackle dudes, boom, take them down. Then you got wrestling in it, you got karate in it, you got kickboxing, you got boxing. I mean, it's just all these disciplines that are mixed into one event. And that's what you call mixed martial arts. So when you talk about what's the difference between all these different sports, it's because they're in football, you can't punch them in the face. Well, you're not supposed to, but we've seen it happen. But, you know, you have rules and regulations in a lot of these different sports, the things that you cannot do. Well, in mixed martial arts, it's pretty much all of them combined.
Now, recently they started regulating the sport more, and like when we were talking last night, it's just some of the early days, early fights, when there was no rules. And that was a different era, because now they regulate it and they have different rules and things like that. And but yeah, so you grew up in Macon, Georgia. Give us a snapshot of what 5 to 6 years old looked like for you, because you know, no dad, you know, 2 older brothers, mom was there but not there. So just give us a snapshot of what that looked like for you growing up.
Well, I mean, if you ever looked at the movie or saw a war movie, you know, it has to do with Vietnam or anywhere else where bombs are going off and it seemed like people around you were all getting killed and stuff like that. Well, as a 5-year-old kid, being in Georgia, when these neighborhood fights would break out, that's what it was like to me as a 5-year-old child. I mean, it was that intense because it just seems like there was so much violence going on during that time, especially me growing up at 5 years old. I had 2 older brothers. One was 6 and one was 7. I was 5. So when these things started to happen, and because of the color of our skin, really, nothing more than that, it just became to me like life and death. So as a 5-year-old kid, watching all this stuff happen in front of me and not being able to understand really what was happening, I mean, a lot of times I don't remember, like when I did my talks, there was a lot of stuff that happened that I don't remember how this got to here or this got to here. There was a lot of space in between there that I just blacked out, and a lot of stuff that, you know, happened to me and my brothers that no kid should ever have to go through, stuff that will stay with you the rest of your life. It affects your thought process and your thought of how life is supposed to be, how men and women are supposed to treat each other. The things that happened to us as a young child, I mean, it's like it was really a hard thing to live with all the way up until I was, in my 30s, until I could really get a handle on it.
Now you were down south, and so there was some racial tension going on. Of course, talk a little bit about that, of what you had to go through and experience with that down south.
Well, a lot of times, there was an incident in the bathroom at the school where I was being jumped. I went in to go to the bathroom, and a bunch of these kids came in, and they started pointing at me. And we're talking 5 years old. I mean, it's not like we were older or anything like that. It's hard to imagine kids that young, especially being in kindergarten or grade school, being that young, that the mentality would even be there. But because of what was happening in our nation at the time, where you seen these things going on TV, where the parents were sitting in front of the TV, African Americans sitting there watching their people getting beat up and stabbed and hung and burned and arrested for walking down the wrong neighborhood, the anger that went into them started to come out their mouths. And after they're coming out of their mouths, the kids are sitting there, 5-year-old kids, 6-year-old kids sitting there, they're listening to what their parents are saying about what's happening on TV. So then they see me at school, and they're angry at me because they see the same thing their parents see. And so they start beating up on me. And that's normally what would happen, even at the park. We were at a park, too, one time where I was being jumped. Same situation. I remember my brother ran through there and grabbed me and pulled me out. And I didn't know it was him. I just saw him flash through there, and I got grabbed. And we started running. And then I turned to look. And there was probably 7 or 8 kids running after us. And as I turned to look back, I saw this one girl had blood running down her face. And what had happened was that he ran through there, and he had a brick in his hand, and he threw and hit this girl in the face. She was the one kicking me in the head. He threw the brick and hit her in the face, then grabbed me, and we took off running. Well, we had a house that was right around the park, right around the corner from the park. We get to our house, and this is where I talk about like that Vietnam movie where it just seemed like everybody was dying around me. We get into the house, and I'm standing on the window trying to hold it down, the little shutter things, and the kid steps back with the clod and throws it and breaks the window. Well, I fall down off the window, and I end up got a gash on my foot. I remember just taking off, running through the house, and slid under the bed, and I could see down the hallway. And I see my brothers just frantically running and trying to keep doors closed and kicking people out the window. And they're 6 and 7 years old. I mean, this is happening right here, and the other kids are no older. And it was this chaotic stuff going on. And as I'm looking out, I see through the front window, all of a sudden, all these parents started showing up. And then 2 police officers show up. And then a few minutes later, I couldn't even tell you the time, my biological mother shows up. And as she starts walking towards the door, and she's freaking out because it looks like they're going to burn our house down, she walks up. Well, this lady that had her daughter there that got hit with the brick reaches over and punches my biological mother in the face. And all heck breaks loose. And I don't remember anything. I just remember just closing my eyes. And I can't tell you how I got out from under the bed. I can't tell you what happened or anything that went on from there. I don't know. And that's kind of you think about it, at 5 years old and 6 years old and 7 years old, growing up in that kind of an atmosphere. I mean, it changes your perspective on your life, on how you look at life and how you're growing up. It doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. You're in this zone, this world that you believe is normal. And this is just the way things are supposed to be.
Wow. So this is all happening when you're 5, 6, 7 years old.
Yeah.
This is the kind of environment that you're growing up in. And so you're fighting every day. The adults in your life are pretty much, taking advantage of the situation, taking advantage of you. Your dad's not home, your mom's home, but she's not really home because she's sleeping all day. She's working at night. She's a dancer, right?
Go-go dancer.
Go-go dancer. And so there's, I'm sure she's bringing different people into your
Biological
life.
mother, by the way.
Clarify that.
Let me clarify that real quick. I was speaking at an event like this, and I was standing up there and I was talking to a crowd about my mother and how she was a go-go dancer and she was never home and the things that happened to us. And I remember the crowd was starting to turn, and I couldn't figure out who they were looking at, like whether they were paying some attention to the front row. And after the event was over, my mother, who raised me, not my biological mother, was sitting in the front row, and they thought I was talking about her. So she goes, "It wasn't me." So make sure we clarify that. My biological mother and my mother are two different people.
So I'm sure she's bringing all kinds of different people into your life. And so now you're what, maybe 9, 10, and she brings a new person, a new man into your life who was a military background. Talk a little bit about that strained relationship and the effect that it had on you as a child as well.
Well, just kind of laying that era, that time in your head, as I was just talking about what I was living with, and then to have this man come into my mom's life, and it was a short period of time, and it felt to me like it was a week. And all of a sudden, we're in a 1969 Camaro with the trailer on the back, heading to Napa, California, which is like 3,600 miles from where we were living, to a place called Napa, California. I didn't know this world outside of the world I lived. So I didn't know where we were going or what we were doing. But all I knew was that we had a daddy, that we were going to have our own beds to sleep in, that we would have mirrors and TV and food, and things that definitely weren't there where we were at. And so it was pretty exciting to think that our lives were at least going to change to somewhat whatever we didn't know, but it had to be better. And I remember driving down, we were constantly getting backhand because we couldn't sit still. 3,600 miles, 3 boys sitting in the back seat of a 69 Camaro. What'd they expect? So we got backhand several times. And of course, what we grew up with, a backhand was nothing. And it was like, yeah, whatever. So we get there. We stay at his parents' house. The very first night we get there, I hear, and of course, we were all sleeping in the same bed again, except for, my mom and her husband. First thing we hear is this screaming and yelling, "Get off me! Don't hit me!" Glass breaking. And we just kind of looked at each other and just kind of looked and just kind of laughed, like, I guess nothing much changed. It was like we just drove 3,600 miles and nothing changed. Here we were waiting for this white picket fence, this house, this fantasy thing. And we came and we ended up with that. I think it was probably 4 weeks later. I mean, at the time that we lived there, not much changed the whole time. It was pretty tense. So he finds a home that was at a fence. It was backed up right against this school called Pueblo Vista in Napa, California. And so I remember my first day of school. There was this kid, and we were standing there, and especially kind of the way I grew up. I had street sense. I was pretty wise when I saw a shuffle or a rumble or a movement or anything kind of start to group up. And you kind of realize that was a problem. Well, here I'm on the playground, and I see this one kid, and then all of a sudden another kid walks up to him, and another kid walks up to him, and then all of a sudden there's 4 or 5 kids standing there, and they're pointing at me. Now, here I came from this.
It was the first mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you point that out? Here I came from this racial tension from Georgia, which I had no idea at the time. Didn't have a clue about the tension and the racialness. All I thought was that's just the way things were. So we go to Napa, California. We have my first day of school. I walked differently, I talked differently, I acted differently, didn't have the attitude that they had. I mean, it's a middle-class area, right? So I definitely didn't fit in. So the first thing is kids being young like that, 8, 9 years old, somewhere around there, you know, they're usually pretty honest about when they see something different. And so they start pointing and start talking, and next thing you know, they start walking towards me. Well, in my mind, I'm going, okay, there's like 5 of them. I got to get my back up against the wall. So I start finding a wall to lean up against. And then I start, as they're walking up, I start trying to pinpoint the first one. I'm going to knock him out first, him out second.
How old are you?
See how
now?
he cut me off like that? We're in church. You don't want to talk about
No.
knocking people out.
We're going to come back. We're going to come back. But how old are you at this time?
I don't, 9, 10 years old, somewhere around there. 8, 9 years old, 10 years old.
And you're already thinking about finding a wall to back up to, sizing them all up
Yeah.
at 9, 10 years
Dude,
old.
I was doing that at 5.
All right, so no, get back. This is church, but like I said,
Yeah,
we're going to be real.
we're
so
keeping it real, right?
We're keeping it real. I just wanted to point out that you're 9, 10 years old, and you're already sizing them up and kind of setting yourself up for that. So.
And then, you know, especially as a kid come from the street, too, you're always looking for the alpha male, right? The guy that's the one that's going to, you know, be the guy.
Sure, that's what you do.
Right. Well, in this sense, usually that guy is going to be the one walking up front. But in this case, the guy that came up this time, he had like, you know, 4 or 5 guys with him, 4 or 5 guys with him. So he's walking up. And, of course, those guys arrived first. So I just, in my mind, I was, okay, he's the closest and he's the closest. I'm going to take him, and then him, figuring out who I'm knocking out first as they come towards me. Now, I'm 8, 9 years old this time, so when I say knock them out, it's like I'm going to punch them, and hopefully they go down. So they walk up, and I see them, and the oddest thing happens. Because, like, this doesn't happen where I was from, right? So they walk up, and the first thing that happens is this guy steps up and goes, "You think you're tough?" And I was like, "What?" So like, I'm trying to figure out, what did he just say? And then all of a sudden, he's like, "Man, this is our school. This is our town. And we don't like new people," and all this stuff he was saying, and I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to him, but I'm just thinking to myself, are they trying to talk to me and make friends, or they want to fight? It's like I couldn't actually figure that thing out yet. So as he keeps talking, then I start hearing words I understand clearly. And he goes, "After school, behind the gym, at 3 o'clock, we're going to fight." Now, this is all familiar to me, right? Like, I know that. So I hit him, right? Boom, down goes the first one. Boom, down goes the second one. All of a sudden, I'm standing there putting the boots to the first guy, bang, and a bang, and a bang. And I look up, waiting for the other guys to jump on me. And I look up, and all of a sudden, they're gone. And I was like, yeah, that don't happen where I come from, because most of the time we don't ring a dinner bell when we go to fight. It's like ding, ding, ding. 3 o'clock, everybody show up before Ken gets there, and we'll jump him when he comes around the corner. So that was kind of my experience. Think about it. I didn't belong in Georgia, and I was born there. That's where I grew up, and I didn't know that, but I felt that's just the way the world was. Then I go to somewhere else, and now I really don't feel comfortable because it's not what I'm used to. I don't see the things I'm comfortable with. So, and I don't belong there. So here I am at 8 or 9 years old, and I don't feel like I have anywhere that I feel like I belong.
Wow. So in Georgia, you're fighting. Chaos is all around you. Home life's crazy. Streets are crazy. This man comes into your life, and you think that everything's going to change.
Yeah.
And you move across country, and nothing changes. And everything is still in chaos in your life and in your family. And something interesting about this time, talk about when, there was an interesting story when you were walking down the street with a local church. Well, maybe first, before we get into that, how did you even hear about church, or because before this you never went to church, right? You never never heard the gospel message or anything like that. How did you start hearing about church and getting that opportunity to go to a church?
Well, I've been in trouble a lot, so, I had been sent away. My first home, group home, became a ward of the court. And I ran away from that home. Didn't like it, didn't want it. I just ran away, went back on the streets. Well, I got caught, then I got sent back home. I remember walking into my front room as I was being sent home, because they didn't have, in juvenile hall, they were full. I mean, they just didn't have any room. And so I remember they said, well, we're going to send you home, you know, and kind of on a house arrest thing. And, you know, really, I mean, where am I going to go? When I ran away, I lived in a car 3 blocks from my house. It was like I'm going to run away from, like I'm not going to another state or anything. So they go ahead and they drop me off at my house. And I remember walking in the house. And I saw my biological mother. She was, and this was midday, I think Saturday. It was a weekend. And I remember walking in. And I saw her sitting on the chair, and I remember she was just crying. And she had this black book in her lap, and I was like looking around for him, right? Like, because usually if there's crying and that stuff going on, it's probably because they were fighting, and he wasn't there. So I'm thinking, so I was like, what are you crying for? She just kind of looked up and smiled, and she was like, oh, I'm just happy, you know, feel like my life is changing, you know, all these things that she was saying. And I was confused, right? And she said that, you know, she was reading the Bible, and I was like, I knew what the Bible was, but I didn't totally know what it was, you know, I knew what it was about. And I thought to myself, like, why would people do that to themselves? It's like, you're crying. I mean, it's not like it's a romance model or novel or something, and you're crying because, you know, it's the Bible. It's like, it's supposed to make you happy. And that's what I'm thinking in my head. I was like, why are you doing that to yourself? And she says, like, and then I just, like, in my mind, I'm thinking, like, man, parents are crazy. Like, they're weird. So I remember walking to my room, and I remember she mentioned the day if I wanted to go to church the next day. And I thought to myself, well, you know, where's this? His name was Bob. I go, where's Bob going to be? So he's going to be home, and you could stay with him if you want. I said, I'll go. I'll go. Well, I thought, you know, what I knew about church was, you know, what you saw on TV, you know, raise people from the dead, they walk on water, you float, you know, all this stuff. And I said, man, this ought to be fun. I'll go to church and have some fun with it. So we go to church, and I go to the youth pastors, and she brings me to this kids program. And so I go in there, and, you know, like I said, it was like I might as well have been wearing a monkey suit walking in, because I did not fit in. It's like all these nice kids walking around smiling. I had this edge to me, and it was, I knew they could tell as soon as I walked in, like, it's gonna be a tough one. So we get in there, and then they're going to do this appreciation thing during the week where they're going to go out to the neighborhood. They're going to hand these flyers out in the neighborhood. And they had these Wrigley spearmint gums stuck to them, to these little pieces of papers, and they're going to walk up and they hand it to them, and they give them their spiel. They come to church, you know. So it's like, I ain't walking up to the door. I said, half these people I robbed, so I'll carry the box. And so we're walking around the neighborhood, and of course carrying the box, and, you know, like I said, I wasn't a nice person, and I can imagine every time someone would come to the box and actually get a piece of paper, it was like they would reach in and go. Like, so I remember watching, and I got bored, so I started eating some of the gum, and these kids would go up and they would hit their spiel. Like, you'd hear them talking, you know, you had this spiel going on, and all of a sudden it had something to do with the Wrigley spearmint gum. When they go to do the Wrigley, say something about the whatever it's supposed to be, all of a sudden they would stop, like the gum is missing. And then they would turn and look at me, and I'd be like, yeah, I did it. And even at that time, I mean, I'm serious. I can remember walking down with this box, and these people going up to these rooms and in these houses, and when the door would open, I would literally raise the box up, because there was some of them that I had actually stole their bikes, or I broke into the car and stole their stereo, and they knew I did it. So it's like trying to hide behind the boxes. I'm walking behind some of these houses. It's like, oh my goodness. And I'm in church. So.
And this is where you hear the gospel message for the first time, correct?
I don't know anything about church. Never been there. And I remember as I was carrying the box, I can remember it clearly. I was stepping off the curb. We were coming off the curb, and I remember stepping down. And I remember feeling peace, freedom, happiness, love. I didn't even know what that was. I never experienced anything like that. I'd never been, as far as I can remember, I had never been hugged and told I love you without someone wanting something from me. I'd never felt that. I never understood the family unity or any of this. And all of a sudden, here I was filled with this unfamiliar kindness, love, and it was one of those things where I wanted it, but I was afraid of it. Because if I got it, I left myself vulnerable. I left myself open. But if I didn't, then I would feel the way I have always felt. And I never felt this thing that happened. And it was very powerful. It was a thing that I had to know. No matter how hard it was, I had to know. And I remember going to the youth pastor and trying to talk to him. And remember what I've already experienced with people, to try to go up to another grown person with what you've already experienced, to try to tell them that you felt happiness and freedom and love, only opened up a door for someone to take advantage of you in my world that I had already experienced. So here I am trying to explain all this thing without exposing myself or creating the wrong kind of atmosphere or thought in my mind. And I remembered that I don't remember what I was saying, but I remembered he understood what I was saying. And like I said, I was very confused and I had, just like I'm doing now, I have a hard understanding of what it was. And I remember for however or whatever, he understood it. And I remember saying to me, it's the Holy Spirit. And I was like, whoa, whoa. Like, what do you mean? And he tried to explain it, and I had no clue. And really in my mind, what I was trying to do was go, how do I get that again? How do I experience that again? And he said, you have to accept Jesus Christ into your life. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, even I still had doubts, what do I have to do? Tell me first. I remember he's telling me, you just have to, say these words and accept Jesus and, get baptized, wash your sins away. And I was thinking to myself, okay, we better get a lot of water. And I was like, okay, like out of my mouth, okay. Now I want you to think about this. This is my neighborhood. These are the people I robbed, I beat up, I was mean to, set the school on fire. There's a lot of things I did. Now all of a sudden I'm being embraced by half these people. I remember I got baptized. I accepted Jesus to my best ability of understanding. I remember standing up there and doing just like I'm doing now, I was telling my testimony, right? Here I was, 8, 9, 10 years old. I'm standing in front of people who, most of them are looking and pointing at me, go, he's the one that broke into my car. I'm standing up in front of them and asking them, hey, I want to accept Jesus into my heart. I want to tell you my story. And I told them what had happened. Stepping off the curb, I felt this thing. I didn't know. I can remember what I said. But I remember at the end of it, that all of a sudden I felt like I didn't feel dirty anymore. I didn't feel useless. And so here I was standing at this moment and going, I want to do this. I want to try to experience more. And here I am young. I hadn't experienced this before, so my understanding of this isn't as clear as most people. And I was still really rough, and I still had a lot of things, especially at that age, that I needed to work through. And it wasn't a couple days after that, yanked me right out of the home and put me in another home, another placement. Remember, I was just home there for a visit until they could find another opening. And so here I was, willing to accept Jesus, willing to move forward in that direction, grabbed, yanked out of there, put into another home where I had no ability to have an understanding of who Jesus Christ was.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. When we were talking last week, and you were kind of sharing some of these things as we were driving around. One of the things that I thought really stood out to me was, so here you are. You finally hear the gospel message. You finally hear about His love, His mercy, His grace. You feel it. You sense it in your life, and so you accept Him into your heart. You accept Him into your life, and then immediately you're pulled away from any kind of people that can develop that or disciple that and teach you what it means to be a Christ follower and all those kinds of things. And then you go to home after home after home. You break out, you run away, you get kicked out, all of those kinds of things. But then you get brought to the Shamrock home. And a couple of things before we talk about something else. A couple of things I want you to briefly talk about is the impact that the Shamrock home had on your life in teaching you how to channel your aggression. Obviously the Shamrock home was preaching Jesus and teaching church and all those kinds of things. But the impact that had on your life moving forward into your adult life. Because what age were you when you went to the Shamrock?
13.
13.
Yeah.
So you're 13. So just talk about that briefly, that impact that the Shamrock home had on your life.
Yeah. And real quick, too, just do a brief history on that. After I had gotten into the system, awarded the court, I went through, after I failed the first one, then I went to church, got all that stuff. Then I went into another placement. The Lord planted a seed in me. I think it's important that we know this, that there was a seed planted in me. Because I wasn't going to get this from anywhere else. I wasn't going to get anybody to help me understand any of this. So it was planted there through that experience with that youth pastor and with that church and with my biological mother. All that whole thing had a reason for it to happen. And that was so that I could experience who Christ was. And so now moving forward, I went to all these other homes, and I felt like I wanted something better. So when I would go to these homes, I wasn't just running away from these homes because I just wanted to run away like before and wanted to be out on the street. I ran away from these homes because I felt like I wasn't getting what I was searching for. And I wasn't consciously searching for it. It was unconsciously the feelings I had, not feeling right, not feeling comfortable, feeling like there's something better. And I would run away. And I wouldn't run away to the streets. I'd run away and turn myself back into the juvenile hall. And so I went through a lot of them, and then until about 13 years old, I got to a place called the Shamrock Boys Home. They told me this was my last chance. If I don't do well here, I'm going to prison. Now, it didn't scare me because all my buddies were in prison. I got 3 square meals and a place to sleep, so it didn't scare me any. It was just the thought of, like, it's my last chance. Now, I've been unconsciously searching for something that whole time. I end up going to the Shamrock Boys Home, which is the only group home that I had ever gone to that taught church. And the reason being is because most places, they wouldn't let you teach church. They taught church. And the reason why they taught church was because, it wasn't because it was acceptable. It was because they had such a high success rate on turning kids out after 6 months or a year and being able to graduate from that program and going home, that Bob Shamrock pretty much could do whatever he wanted to do, and they would look the other way because he was being so successful with those kids. The reason why was because he was teaching church, and the kids had a solid foundation to learn from. And so they were, over and over again, these kids were being successful. So thinking about that, I end up there, out of all the homes I could have been at, I go there, I get to go to church, I get to feed that seed that was planted in me, not unconsciously searching for anything anymore. And now all of a sudden I feel like I belong somewhere. I feel like I finally got somewhere I feel like I can breathe. I get there. I start playing football because I had anger. I mean, I was constantly fighting for anybody that looked at me differently or said something to me, right to fighting. As soon as they said or looked at me wrong, boom, fight. I remember Bob Shamrock came up to me, is my father, but he adopted me later on. Came up to me and said, you know, we need to find an outlet for you. We need to find something that will help you release that anger that's inside of you. So he introduced me to football. And so I started playing football. You know, I had a lot of learning to do. But I became a star player. At the end of my freshman year, I was one of the leading tacklers. I was, you know, people did not want me to tackle them. I was intense. And I would hit somebody, and when I hit them, we'd go to the ground, and my feet were still driving. I had to wait for the whistle to blow, and then I'd stop. I had that much tension inside me. When I was on the sidelines, I'd be running up and down the sidelines, screaming at people, "Come on!" When the offense was on the field out there, "Come on!" and smacking them on the, "Let's go!" And then when we defense, I'd run out there, "Let's go!" I was on all the special teams and always the hit man, and I was that tense. I mean, I was even accused at one time through my, I think it was my junior year, of being on crack. My coach asked me, he says, "Are you all right, son?" I was like, "Why, is something wrong?" He goes, "Man, you just, when game time comes around, it's like you turn into this freak." I was like, "Why, do you want me to stop?" No, keep doing what you're doing, but can you tone it down on the sidelines? You're giving people headaches." I was like, "Okay, I'll try." But that's how much adrenaline and anger and frustration that I had inside of me that had to come out.
Is that when you had your really bad injury, neck injury?
Yeah. Now, you think about all the stuff I went through. My sophomore year, everything's going well. I feel like I have a home. I feel like I belong. I'd already graduated from there, and I didn't want to go back to that problem that I had, which we called home. Bob Shamrock said I could stay on, and he would pay for me. Because if I went back there, I'd have the same friends, the same problems, and I would probably get back in trouble again. So he let me stay. My sophomore year, here I am, everything's great. I come home, and I'm told that they're going to get a divorce. Right? So here I am, after all that comfort, I find a home, I think everything's going well. And now all of a sudden, divorce means to me like everything's going to come to an end. Where am I going to go? I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to where I was at. And I remember in my mind, I was thinking about going out and drinking. And of course, if I drink, I'm probably going to get in a fight. I get in a fight, I'm probably going to put somebody in the hospital. You know, all these things are going to happen because I'm frustrated and angry because everything that I worked for at this time and everything that I had was being ripped away from me. And it's not my fault. I didn't do it. I didn't do anything wrong. But now you're taking it from me. And I was so angry. And I remember he came to me and he said, "I am not going to let you fail. I will make sure that this home continues and that you still have a place to live, no matter what happens." And I remembered in my heart was like, I was halfway there, right? Because I didn't believe a whole bunch of stuff. But I was like, at least like, okay, let's see what happens. And so he did. He went forward. And things were going well. And now here I am. I was a star football player, a wrestler who qualified for state. I had schools looking at me. This is my senior year. Everything is going my way. I am going to get a scholarship somewhere. And I played football. They had a couple schools looking at me. I was going into my wrestling season. I was undefeated going into the last part of the quarter of wrestling. And all of a sudden, I break my neck. Wrestling. I'm laying on the mat. I can't move. They come in with this, they call it a Star Wars board, where they slide it under and it clamps together, and they put a board over the top of you, clamp you, and then they pick you up and they take you away. Well, they clamped me up, took me away. I remember in the hospital, I had sharp pains going down my arm. Started getting my feeling back, but as I was getting my feeling back, I started feeling more pain. And excruciating, sharp pains going down my arms and my legs, and I couldn't figure out what's going on. And I remembered after they started getting all that under control, the doctor came into me and told me I would never play sports again. I was like, I remember looking over at my dad, and I said, you might as well shoot me. I said, 'cause I don't know anything else. I don't know how to be a part of this world without that. Everything evolves around that. That's how I survived. And I remembered he said, let's deal with now. You know, things that are going on right now. He said that there's nothing we can do about what's now. He said, but I want you to think about this. He said, everything that you know about Jesus, has he ever, in any scripture or anything that we know of, brought somebody right up to the cross and then dropped them? And he said, do you think he brought you this far just to let go now? And I thought to myself, no way. No. Now, I thought about it differently than he did. I mean, he wasn't thinking about me saying, okay, I get it. I just got to train harder, get bigger, stronger, and I can still play football. I mean, here I'm laying in this bed, being told I never play contact sports again. And when he said that to me, I was like, you're right. And I remembered as I was going through this trial after I got out of the hospital, I started hitting the weights, started getting bigger and stronger. My intensity grew because I wasn't going to let it go. I knew that this wasn't the end. I believed in what he told me. I believed in what Christ said. And so I trained and I trained. In 2 years after I broke my neck, I played for Shasta College. Now, all the other schools, like I had the rabies or something, because they all just disappeared. I mean, I couldn't get anybody to get on the phone and tell me, hey, can I come back? I mean, nobody would talk to me. So I go play college football at Shasta College. My first year I redshirted. My second year and my third year playing a junior college ball, I was an All-American. Never once had any neck problems. Of course, we all know what happened after that, you know, my career and stuff. And I believe that 100%. Now, it wasn't exactly what my father meant. Now, when Christ tells something to happen to somebody and you say something to somebody, the person you're telling it to may get it one way, and another person sitting next to him may get it another way, because he speaks to all of us differently. He spoke to me, get up and don't lay down. You never have, don't start now. And so I got up and I started, and I believed in him. I believed what he said. That's why I'm here today. Because right then and there, it could have been it could have ended all of it if I would have believed what everybody else was saying, that nobody comes back from a neck injury, especially at that age. You know, I was 17 years old, never started anything yet. And so, you know, I'm here standing here today talking to you with all the stuff that I was able to accomplish because of that one moment right there where I believed what Christ said.
We give Ken a hand.